Hey everyone, this is Jonathan with Underpromoted, and today I have Jovanka here with me to preview the women's candidates. Just before continuing, a few notes. Firstly, Jovanka and I recorded this last week before the news came out that Humpy had withdrawn from the tournament. Obviously, that's very sad to hear, but we hope all the best for Humpy, and her replacement in the candidates tournament, Anna Muzychuk, is very deserving, and we wish the best to her. Secondly, this is a bit of a new format for Underpromoted. In the past, I've just done interviews. But let me know what you think about this one, what you liked about it, what could be improved or added for next time. And finally, less important, I think my camera was acting up a little bit when we recorded, so the video might be a little bit blurry for me. Yeah, really excited for this because, first of all, Jovanka, you're my first repeat guest. And second of all, yeah, I love the candidates. And especially the women's candidates, is one of the reasons I started my channel.
Yeah, I'm also super excited about this one because it's like the big unknown who's going to be challenging for the World Championship crown. And one of the things about this particular field that we have ahead of us is that I more or less feel that absolutely anyone can win. We have a beautiful mix of the old guard, the experienced players, and players making their debut who all have a realistic chance of winning. And yeah, when it's like that, there's going to be fire. You know, how are the players going to be dealing with their nerves? How are they going to be dealing with the tension? I mean, what opening novelties are we going to be seeing? And I just can't wait to see what is going to unfold on our screens. And we're not that far away, Jonathan.
Yeah, and so just to start with a little bit of introduction for anyone who doesn't know what the candidates is, it's the tournament that decides who gets to challenge the current world champion to become the world champion. So it happens every 2 years. It's a 8-player double round robin, which means every player plays all the other players twice, which means 14 rounds. So it makes it the longest major tournament other than the World Cup. Before this format, it used to be alternating between candidates versus a World Cup format, which Jovanka, you actually participated in 2 times, right?
Yes. I did it twice, once in 2006, I think, and 2010. And I think both times I was eliminated in the second round as well. But it was a really brutal format, I gotta say. And more often than not, it was decided in tie breaks. It was very stressful. And you often felt that you didn't really have a chance, because I remember back in 2010, I played Humpy Koneru in the second round, lost the first game. I mean, she played a great game, and then I didn't manage to strike back with white, and that was it. I was on the plane home. So it was very brutal, but I can actually tell you a little bit about my preparation for this particular event. So both times I found out months before, I would say, and immediately I started preparing, and I knew who I was going to be playing, and I assembled a team, and we just got to work. The preparation was pretty intense, I'm gonna say, and when I got there as well, it was also increasingly nerve-wracking because it's very difficult when you're in such high pressure scenario, you know, to even rest, and your brain is always thinking about chess, thinking, have I prepared enough? What about this variation? Did I have that covered? What am I going to do against my opponent? What about my next opponent down the line? And you go in there with all these hopes and dreams and worries as well, and it's a really difficult tournament to play, and I think almost everyone just loses weight because of the tension and the nerves at stake. And it was pretty intense when I was playing a knockout format rather. I think it's going to be even more stressful for our players in the double round robin, because it's a long event. This is like a marathon, and it's not just about how you start. I mean, you got to think about how you're going to deal with the nerves and halfway through the tournament. You're playing with the white side, playing with the black side. What approach are you going to be taking? Your opponent's preparations. You're going to also have to adapt on the fly, because these players, I mean, they will have been preparing for months. I mean, some of our players, they've dedicated 1.5 months or even longer to coming up with new ideas and new ways of how they're going to be approaching. So, I mean, for sure, we're going to be expecting a lot of opening surprises, people playing perhaps different openings than they're normally playing, and they're going to come armed with seconds and also support network. I think you have to have that in such a special event because there's so much at stake here, Jonathan. Like, you win this, you're going to start challenging for the crown, and that could be the step to a massive future.
Yeah, so looking at the field here, it's very accomplished. Probably a mix of half and half between veterans and the up-and-comers, or the young people who've already arrived. Between them, they have 6 Blitz World titles, 5 Rapid World titles, and 1 Classical from TAN. And actually, it's interesting that many of them have played the candidates several times. So 5 of them played the last edition of candidates. But even if we go back to 2019, this will be the 4th candidates tournament that Goryachkina, Zhongyi, and Kateryna Lagno have played together. So I think that's pretty interesting. They're like old friends at this point.
Yeah, old rivals, I would say, because we do have the experience guard. You have, as you mentioned, Kateryna Lagno, Zhongyi, Humpy Koneru, Aleksandra Goryachkina. So these are the highly experienced players. Aleksandra Goryachkina won the candidates back in 2019. She won very convincingly as well. Zhongyi, she won in 2024. And traditionally, I think she overperforms in such events. And Kateryna Lagno, for sure, she's played many, many times. She knows exactly what is required in order to do well in these kind of events. And we also have Humpy Koneru, who finished 2nd. This potentially could be her very last candidate. She's spoken about this before, that she's 38. It's a question for her whether she wants to retire or whether she wants to test herself and see how far she goes. But this is definitely a golden opportunity for her. And when it comes to the other candidates, we also have Vaishali. So Vaishali, she played in the candidates in 2024. So she lost a whole load of games, but then she struck back, and it was a really volatile event for her, but she did finish in equal 2nd. So again, someone who has the experience to understand exactly what you need to do to adapt. And then we have players who are making their debuts. So top at the list, you have Zhu Jiner. She goes in at the top seed. She's just 23 years old. Top seed of 25.78. And 2025 was literally her year. She started the year at 25.16, and then she just finished it, gaining a bucket load of points. And then we have other players who are at their peak rating. Bibisara Assaubayeva, 25.16. She just gained 19 points in Tata Steel in Vaishali in the challenges. And Divya Deshmukh, who I think won everyone's hearts when she won the World Cup. It was a big sensation for her. She defeated everyone on the way, and she got her Grandmaster title. And she comes in with this confidence and self-assuredness that I think is really refreshing to see. So we have this beautiful mix of players. You have the young and you have the experience. Now, which one will emerge triumphant? Well, that is the ultimate question. I don't really want to make any predictions because I think you set yourself up for failure there, because you can literally argue the case for absolutely anyone. But I think it's very, very exciting. And the fact that this is going to be a very long event is also going to be a real test for the players. It's also at an unusual time control, I want to be saying as well, because it starts off with 40 moves with 2 hours, as far as I remember. 2 hours with no increment. And then once you pass move 40, you get that 30-second time bonus. And a lot of the players these days are not used to playing without increment. That's kind of become a thing in modern day chess, that you need to get used to that 30-second addition on the clock in order to keep yourself going. And here the players don't have that. They have that intensity at the middle game where things could just fall apart. And in this respect, I would say players like Bibisara have the advantage because they played at that time control. That's exactly what it was in Vaishali in Tata Steel. So she will have the advantage of having experienced that frantic time trouble and then readjusting once the time control has passed. But I can't stress it enough. If you're going to be following an event, this is the one to follow.
It's interesting if you look at the women's rating list. 7 of the top 12 women are candidates. It's actually 7 out of the 10 women if you exclude Zhu and Jun, who's the current world champion, and Hou Yifan, who's mostly retired. And if you look at the women's Grand Prix standings, 6 out of the top 7 are candidates. So I think really you get a sense that there is a core group of elite players who tend to win most of the events. So why don't we get to discussing specific players of the field? Or first, maybe, Jovanka, anyone you're rooting for? I know you love your underdogs.
I it's very difficult to root for someone. Half of me wants the youth. I'm really excited to see how Divya, a player like Divya, who I feel is so fearless in both her approach in life and also in her style of play. I find that such an unusual thing and so refreshing to watch. I want to see her do well, but at the same time, I really am rooting for a player like Humpy. I've known Humpy for a long, long time. I know that this could potentially be the last event that she plays. She's constantly thinking about balancing family life as well and thinking about retirement. How far will she push herself? And she's very aware that this could be her last candidates. So, the heart is perhaps kind of leaning towards Humpy. But, I think I just really want to cheer for all of the players. I think it just depends on who comes with the most fire in their belly, and then I'll probably cheer for them as well. But you're right. It's a really interesting event because you have some seasoned competitors, like, you mentioned the Grand Prix. And there it was Zhu Jiner, Humpy Koneru and Aleksandra Goryachkina who really shone. They were very, very consistent in 2025. But I agree with you, Jonathan. Let's break down our candidates and kind of give everyone like an idea of why they should be cheering for this player, and their strengths and what we can aim to see from them. Because I think for some of our viewers, perhaps some of the players are a little bit of a mystery. I know, for instance, the top seed, Zhu Jiner, 25.78. She had a fantastic 2025. She gained a whole load of rating, had some standout events like Fujairah Masters, where she did very, very well. She started as a bottom seed and she finished in, I think she... Sixth, yeah. And she did extremely well in the Turkish league, got there 8 points out of 9. She qualified via the Grand Prix, and it'll be very interesting to see how she does. She came so close to winning the Women's World Rapid Championship. She tied for first. She fought with a tiebreak alongside Aleksandra Goryachkina. Incidentally, Humpy Koneru also finished in the same amount of points, but she didn't quite make the cut for playing the tiebreak. But that's a whole nother story. So for a lot of us, though, she is unknown. We know that she's very strong. She's 23 years old. But, what kind of makes her tick? What is her style? And seeing her play, I see one thing, that she's very versatile. And I think that probably reflects in her coach. She's been working with Wang Hao for a long time. And just going to give a heads up to my really good friend Lisa, or Lang Yao. And she gave me an insight into the Chinese school of chess. And she was saying that it's very much determined by hard work. The players are training all the time. You have to have dedication. You have to have this determination to really work on your game, not just with a team, but also by yourself as well, And I think I read a story, even Ding Liren noted how hard Zhu Jiner worked on her chess. He said, well, everyone was on their phones, chatting away, sending messages, maybe playing online chess or something. She was there with a book on tactics, just studying. And I think she was also very, very young at that time, which is also equally unusual. But you feel that as well in her play. She's very versatile in her opening choices. She can open with e4. More recently in Prague Challenger, she was opening up with d4. She can play conservative positions, very good in the end game. But also, if you throw a complicated position at her, she will be able to, as I say, crunch the numbers and work things out. And that's actually something that's very indicative of the Chinese school of chess. It's very, very active, activity over everything, and also very up to date with the theory. And uncompromising is what I would say. And in the case of Zhu Jiner, when you look at her play, she is very, very serious, very, very focused. And it'll be very interesting to see how she does, because she's now at a career best, 25.78. Will she be able to maintain that? She's making her debut now as a top seed. That does entail with it a lot of pressure, because there's a lot of expectation on her shoulders. And in Prague challenges, I would say that she struggled a little bit, but then we constantly have that narrative that you play 2 tournaments in a row. First tournament is almost irrelevant. It's just like a warm-up. And the second tournament is where you really start to find your rhythm and get going. So if she played like she did in Fujairah, then, okay, she's a very clear favourite. She's the favourite on paper in terms of rating. But will she hold the form? That is, for me, a big question.
And yeah, Zhu Jiner is a very interesting case, because the way she qualified to the candidates was through the Women's Grand Prix. And the way she got qualified for the Women's Grand Prix was because Lei Tingjie dropped out or rather, she couldn't get a visa to play in one of the legs. So without that, maybe it's possible that she would have still climbed to her current rating, but much more slowly. The way things are now, she's played some big tournaments. She's going to be playing as one of 6 women in Norway chess later in the summer. So yeah, very special for her that she got the opportunity to show her skills.
I like that whole kind of lucky series of coincidences that kind of worked in Jiner's favour. She got the space in the Grand Prix because Lei Tingjie couldn't do it. And as a result of that, she's now climbed to, I'm going to stress this, number 2 in the world, just behind Ho Yifan. So it's just funny how the cards fall. And it will be very interesting to see, will she change up her chess as well? Because she's a very active player, very ambitious. And will the nerves actually strike? Judging from her play, I would say you don't tend to detect too many nerves. But she goes in as a clear number 1.
So who's next on the list?
Okay, we have Humpy. So, recently the news broke out on Twitter that Humpy is a little bit uncertain as to whether she will even actually play because of the geopolitical concerns that she has, which is, understandable. I mean, it would certainly be amazing if she did play. She said it herself. She's 38 years old. She's unsure how much longer she will continue playing chess professionally. She's spoken in detail about the challenges of balancing chess with motherhood. She's sometimes said, when she has a bad tournament, she thinks, well, I left behind my family in order to do badly at a chess tournament. Why am I putting myself through this? Why am I putting my family through this? And she's also said, again, that now she doesn't feel the hunger and then that desperation that you have when you're young, that you have to make that mark on the world, because she's already been there. She's already made that impression. She's a complete trailblazer, really. She's paved the way forward for the young Indian stars to follow in her footsteps. And with that, that's kind of brought some peace to her mindset, for sure, that she can just focus on enjoying the game as it is. There's no pressure on her that she has to win. She just simply has to enjoy what is ahead of her. And that has really helped her. I would say, 2025 started off fantastically when she became World Rapid Champion. It also ended nearly fantastically as well when she tied for first in the Women's World Rapid Championship. Unfortunately, she didn't get to play the tie breaks because of the tie break regulations, where it was only the top 2 finishers on tiebreak that could compete for the playoff. But remarkable consistency, did extremely well in the Grand Prix. I mean, you constantly see her finishing first, second, third in Norway chess, second in the Women's World Cup. I really enjoy watching Humpy play. She has a very classical style, something that I greatly admire, because I kind of play that way, or I aspire to play that way myself. And the fact that she's been Women's World Rapid Champion, she's also challenged Hou Yifan for the crown many moons ago. But it just shows that she's got consistency and class. She's really got her style and she's refined it to a T. And you see her adapt certain things, like her players become a little bit more flexible, as we've all had to do. I mean, you can't just keep on playing the same opening again and again. You have to do some dancing here and there. You know, sometimes you'll see a Neo London, sometimes she'll move away from her kind of D4 classical setups and she'll play something a bit different. But wherever there's always a little bit of poison in her strategy, and that's something that I really enjoy watching. And I enjoy the fact that she asks the questions to her opponents. You know, your position is slightly uncomfortable. How are you going to start improving? How are you going to break out of this little bind that I've set up for you there? And as black, you know, again, she plays in a very stable way. And I remember when she was challenging Hou Fan for the World Championship crown, I was absolutely amazed by the amount of work that she put into her Petrov and the ideas that her and her team came up with. So I have a big respect for Humpy. And again, my heart says I would love to see Humpy do well. And I would love to see her challenge for the crown once again. And we'll see exactly what she has in mind. I mean, when it came to 2024, I know that she talked about how she had a training camp for 1.5 months, and thanks to the support of the Indian Chess Federation, she was able just to focus on her chess. And she's very honest as well. You know, some things I can relate to as a busy person, that sometimes, you know, weeks will go by without even consulting a chessboard. And sometimes that's her life. And I find that it's very relatable.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned her challenging Hou Fan. I think that was in 2011. So it's been 15 years since that moment, which really speaks to how long her career has been, but also how she's been able to stay at the top. Yeah, and it's something else I think that's very admirable about some of these players is, even though in some sense chess is their life, they're able to do other things too. Like Humpy took, I think, like an 18-month break around 2017 when she had her daughter, and then came back to chess after that. So best wishes to her. It'll be very special if she gets it. And, you know, regardless, she's already a modern legend for women's chess. All right, so next, Ten Zhongyi, same rating of 25-35. She was the challenger last year, 2025, right? In the match against Zhu Jiner, and lost that 6.5 to 3.5.
Yeah, well, Tan Zhongyi, she's already been Women's World Champion. She's been in those boots before. She won the World Championship knockout back in 2017, and she lost it to Zhu Jiner the following year. And as you mentioned, 2025, I would say, began in a tough way, shall we say, for her, because it was her match against Zhu Jiner was the closest non-close match that has been. And the reason I say that, because if you look at it on paper, it looks like, well, Zhu Jiner just completely dominated, but it was far from that at all. And Zhu Jiner did win 4 games in a row, and you know, Tan had to play a lot of that match with her back against the wall. But if you actually deep dive into the games, they were very, very tense. They were decided on very, very small margins. And Tan, she has a really active style. You know, she could have just like knuckled down and gone E45, but no, she doesn't do that, even though she could. It was just all Sicilians from her, a very enterprising, dynamic chess. And I really enjoy that style of play. And the games that followed in that particular World Championship match were very, very sharp. There were tactics aplenty. Well worth studying. And they all kind of hinged on very small moments where Zhu Jiner started to get the better of her. And towards the end, Tan wanted to generate play, and she wanted to generate that activity. And Zhu has a very, I would say, very intelligent, I wouldn't say defensive, but very positional style, where it's almost like the shield, where she's constantly like refuting any threats that you might have. And so Tan was trying desperately to activate things, and she wasn't just accepting the position as it was, and she was trying to impose her will on the board, and ultimately that didn't really work out in her favor. But if you look at her 2025, she went from what could have been a disastrous, what wasn't a world championship that went her way. She then rebounded immediately. Women's World Cup, she played. She did very, very well. She was defeated by Divya Deshmukh, but she then in turn played a third place tiebreak with Lei Tingjie, and she played and she won that one, and she qualified for the candidates once again. She also did very well in the Women's Grand Swiss, and it's been all about the recovery from her. So I would say that she is like the bounce back queen, and very determined and very persistent player. Doesn't let anything kind of get her down. And what I find really inspiring as well about Tan Zhongyi is that she's not just a professional player. She also has a chess academy where she teaches and shares her knowledge with her students in Zhongyi. And what is really, really nice is that she actually says that she uses those students as motivation, and I think they're also doing incredibly well as well. And I gotta say that I was having good fun with the AI, and I was asking it, who would you say is the overperformer? And the AI goes Tan. And Tan Zhongyi statistically is the one that does really well in this kind of format. So she rises to the challenge. And 2019, Aleksandra Goryachkina won, but Tan Zhongyi also finished there at the top. In 2022-23, when they had a different type of knockouts, candidates, it was Tan Zhongyi who was competing in the finals against Lei Tingjie. And in 2024 in Toronto, Tan Zhongyi was the one who just raced ahead. She just lost one game against Lei Tingjie, and that was it. Very, very convincing. She won with 9 points out of 14. This is going to be her fourth candidate, and she's able to use that experience to understand exactly what she needs to do. She works with Jeffrey Zhong, and she's undertaken the lessons from the World Championship match back in 2025 and understood, at times she perhaps needs to calm down and just accept the position that is in front of her. And you know what they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, it makes you tougher. As she's shown back in 2017 when she kind of appeared on our screens almost overnight, becoming Women's World Champion. She wasn't the top dog then, and she's certainly shown since then that she's one to watch, and she just keeps on raising her level. Back in 2024, that was her year. I remember commentating her games at the Cairns Cup, and her play was just fabulous. She could play positional chess. She could go in for the kill right from the beginning. I remember some Sicilians where she just absolutely demolished her opponents. It depends what kind of Tan kind of shows up here. The question is, can she use those qualities of persistence, determination to prove that she is the queen and the candidates? I mean, I would say that this year is perhaps the most toughest field that we have yet.
So, yeah, I think it's probably unheard of, definitely on the open side, for a top player to also be running their own chess academy. And she's even, I think, looking to take on some one-on-one students who have professional aspirations. So maybe that will be a separate episode in the future, but really interesting. Okay, so next on the list, just one rating point below them at 25-34 is Aleksandra Goryachkina. She's the youngest of the veterans, I'd say. So she's only 27, but she's been around for a really long time. This is her fourth candidates since 2019.
Yeah, it's really funny to be calling a 27-year-old like a veteran, but a very, very experienced player. As you mentioned, she won the candidates back in 2019, and I've got to say, in a very, very convincing way as well. Always been hailed as a massive talent. And what kind of set Goryachkina apart from the other players was how she was willing to compete, not just in women's events, but also in open events as well. I remember she was the only woman playing in the Open in the Grand Swiss back in 2021. I think we were all simultaneously cheering for her, to do super well. And, she really did exceptionally well there. And she also challenged Zhu Jiner for the crown. And I remember that one was very, very tense. It had to be decided in tie breaks. So very experienced competitor. I've got to say in 2024, she didn't do so well. She only finished, I say didn't do so well, but that's by her standards, because I think obviously for her, the goal is to get to the top, to become the next women's world champion. And I don't think anything else is going to be sufficient. So she finished 5th in 2024. And so it was a little bit disappointing for her. But if the Women's Grand Prix is anything to show, consistently she is like 1st, 2nd, 3rd. And it does feel like, I'm not necessarily sure that her game has leveled up, but it's somehow become a lot more stable. I mean, her peak rating has been 26.11. And now she's at 25.34, which in this day and age, I think everyone's suffered a rating drop. But I certainly expect to see her back at that kind of level as well. She's the new Women's World Rapid Champion. And she's working with Evgeny Tomaszewski, and he's known as the Professor. And his style of play is very much based on deep analysis and endgame. So Goryachkina, she already has a reputation as being a very fine strategical player, and also as her coaches, maybe go for those kind of positions where she surprises her opponent, where things look optically like they're okay, but actually they pose unpleasant problems to the opponent. And I've got to give a shout out to Yevgeny Miroshnichenko, who told me this story about Evgeny Tomaszewski, who said that he was helping the Turkish team back in the European Team Championships, and they prepared something. This is Alexander Ipatov. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name, but and they got in their preparation, and they were like, "Okay, this is excellent. Black has a great position." Ipatov lost to Tomaszewski, and when they discussed the position afterward, Tomaszewski was like, "No, I've studied this opening for weeks, and I concluded the computer assessment completely wrong." So when you have a player like that, known as the Professor, who is very meticulous about the details, then you know that Aleksandra is going to be exceptionally well prepared. She did very well at the Women's World Rapid Championship. I think she's taken a pause. I haven't seen her play too many games recently, but I also felt it in the when I was watching her play in the Grand Swiss. Very calm. Her endgame technique was very precise, and I was very impressed by how unfazed she is. I mean, you don't ever see her flustered at all. You don't see her like emotional. Like a lot of players, you can sense that they are stressed. With her, it's kind of like this ice cold veneer. And yeah, I think she's a very fearsome opponent. And if she's prepared to grind it out, as the signs will indicate, then I think that is something that is going to be very troubling to the opponents, because I mean we see it already from Zhu Jiner. At some point she had really refined her play to become an endgame specialist. I mean, Zhu Jiner beats Alireza Fruja in one of the most wonderful rook and pawn endgames I've ever seen, and there's a scope for improvement there, because I don't think too many of us are that interested in the endgame phase. We kind of more into the opening and the fireworks of the Tau-like sacrifices, but the endgame could be where it's all at.
There's a lot of mysterious players in chess who we would like to learn more about. Aleksandra is definitely one of those. Yeah, similar to Zhongyi, she gives all her interviews in her native language. Moving on to some of the younger players, Bibisara Assaubayeva is next on the list. For Kazakhstan's chess, there's obviously a lot of young, up-and-coming women, grandmasters or international masters, but she's the vanguard, and yeah, she's a very strong player.
Yeah, definitely. And Kazakhstan, I gotta say, just kind of somehow exploded onto our chess radars. I mean, first they had Zhangjaya Abdumalik, and then also we have a Dinara Satvakasova, and then Bibisara Assaubayeva. I mean, we have a whole list of very strong grandmasters there from Kazakhstan. And it just kind of felt like Kazakhstan as a country were really dedicating a lot of resources to all of their players, and you can definitely see it in terms of their improvement as well. You know, they're getting better and better. I know Bibisara, from a young age, she moved to Moscow because she knew she wanted to be a chess player. I think she does gymnastics in her spare time. She's a very good gymnast, but chess was her calling, and she moved over to Moscow, and where she was studying chess full time. She's now a 3-time Blitz Women's World Champion, which means that one thing, she's got very good instincts and she's a very fast calculator. And she's now at a peak rating of 25-16. So she's just come off an excellent presentation in the Tata Steel Challenges, where she got 19 points. She won, I think she just lost 2 games and she won 4. She did very well. She defeated Andy Woodward, Erwin Lamy, Alina Rebus, amongst others, and she just now also defeated Aleksandra Goryachkina in a freestyle match. So a very tough competitor, and the fact that she is getting better and better also indicates to me one other thing, that she also has very strong nerves. And the reason I'm saying that is because in order to qualify, she was the last player to qualify, and it all hinged on doing a good presentation at the Women's World Rapid Championships and the Women's World Blitz Championship. And we had a scenario in the Women's World Blitz Championship, which was the final event of the circuit, and she literally had to qualify to the finals. And, you know, when you have the best of the best women players who are all speed demons battling it out, she had to get to the finals. And she did that. She just played fantastic chess, and she defeated Anna Muzichuk, who incidentally was her rival for this circuit spot. She did it, and she got there. She became champion for the 3rd time. And she's also spoken about the dedication, hard work. I mean, she's training a lot right now on her chess. I mean, she's also spoken very publicly about how she's training. It costs a lot of money. Chess doesn't come cheap. I mean, we're talking about like having to pay trainers like 1,000 euros per day. And luckily she has the support of the Kazakhstan Chess Federation and other sponsors, so she's able to do that. But it just goes to show she is taking it very seriously. And another versatile player, I'm going to say, I've seen some sparkling games where she's not afraid of castling opposite sides. She's not afraid to initiate the attack. I've also seen her play some fantastic positional games as well. And I remember in the Armageddon Championship in the female portion, I remember that she won that one. Again, we're talking about super fast time controls, 3 minutes plus 2 seconds, and then an Armageddon, and she was the one that very coolly breezed to the top. So I would say she's a person who rises up to those big match moments. She does what is required of her. And the question is though, she's making her debut, and when you are training so hard, can you get yourself into match condition? And the reason I say this is because one of the interviews that really had a big impact on me was when I spoke to Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, and he gave me some insight into what went on behind the scenes for the candidates in his case. And he said to me he was preparing day and night, like you're talking about 10 hours per day. And I think Bibisara has spoken about doing the same thing as well. And he was saying if it wasn't chess, it was just eating, and he was training, he was boxing in order to stay fit, because, you know, these events are marathons and you need to have good nerves. And he said when he got there and he got to playing chess, it wasn't like he froze, but it was like the moves didn't come naturally to him. He found himself playing, in his case, Boris Gelfan's game, that was his opponent, and he said, I didn't get a check. And can you imagine that? My style my crazy start, I did not get a single check in. And then he crashed out because it was a knockout format, and that was it, and all his hopes and dreams, they were gone. Although he said as a consolation, he never lost to Boris again after that. But it was a little too late. And this is something that you really have to balance, because in order to be tournament ready, you have to have that motivation. You even have to have that nerves. You have to be relaxed as well at the same time. You got to have a little bit of that hunger, a little bit of that anger. And it is always that little bit of thing. You can't just go in there completely chill. And if you're just way too tense, then what is going to start happening is that you're unable to make that adjustment, because playing chess is all about asking those questions. So when you're calculating, you're asking those little questions, you're diving into the weeds, and you're just examining things on a move-by-move basis. But in order to sense when it's a time to calculate, you have to zoom out, and you have to make the adjustment, and you have to ask yourself, well, what are the objectives in this position? Is this critical? What is my opponent doing? And it's so easy, when you're forcing things, when you're tense, just to get swept up in your own way of thinking and to perhaps miss those signposts. So this is the big question, in my opinion, for Bibisara. Yes, she's got some experience. She had a fantastic Tata Steel. Even better was that she managed to train on that time, 40 moves in 2 hours. And then on move 41, you get that 30-minute time added, and also then a 30-second time increment, because you've got to have that strong nerves in order to handle the time leading up to the time control. Because when you're kind of relying on that 30-second time increment, well, then you kind of work your way into like a natural kind of rhythm. But if that increment is taken away from you, then you're going to actually physically going to be having to move very quickly. The panic starts to rise, and it is a completely different kettle of fish. So I would say Bibisara has a small advantage in that she's trained in a competitive environment, and Tata Steel, that's intense. It's also 13 rounds as well, so it's a long event. But again, when there's so much on the line here, because we have to remember, for our players, it's not just about producing a good tournament. I mean, we're talking about hopes and dreams. All of them have been dreaming about challenging for the world crown, and that is going to cause that extra level of stress.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, you mentioned a little bit about when you were training for your world championship in the knockout format. It wasn't just like you wanting to get a good result for yourself, but also the training partners who put in time to help you train. And it's great to have sponsorship, to have the support of your country, but that can also bring its own pressures. Moving on to Kateryna Lagno. Yeah, before we get to her chess, I think another shout out to chess moms. We mentioned Humpy earlier, and Kateryna, she qualified via the Grand Swiss, but she was saying that she only arrived to the Grand Swiss a day early because she had to get her 4 kids ready for the first day of school. So another player who's able to manage a whole life outside of being a top contender.
Yeah, big shout out again, to the chess moms who are balancing, life and chess at the same time. It's not easy, if you think about it, studying 10 hours a day, how are you going to do it if you have kids at home asking you, hey, when are you going to spend time with me? Well, how are you going to actually do things with me? And it's a big commitment, right, to dedicate so much of your life to the game. And Kateryna does it really, really well. The way that she plays as well, like Grand Swiss, it looked easy for her, and I was really impressed by how she's always the epitome of focus and determination. I've played her a few times, and you really feel that she wants to win, first of all, but also she's looking for the most active way in order for the position, determine the position. And here's a person, I think, that can use the experience. She knows exactly what is needed in order to get those points. 2024, I would say, wasn't a big success, but when you take a look at the opening preparation that she got in some fantastic positions. But sometimes a tournament requires a little bit of luck. You need your opponents perhaps to collapse a little bit under the pressure, perhaps not put up the best resistance. And things just didn't quite go her way, and she left some points on the table. And so she's someone who knows about what is needed. And she mentioned herself that her primary focus actually is just to enjoy these games, to make sure that she has enough energy to play a 14-round event, because most of us, we stop at 9 if we're lucky. And then, here they got to keep on going. And, rather like the orchestra, you have to start well and you have to finish well. And as long as you muddle through the middle, it's going to be okay. And that's exactly what is needed when you're playing an event like this. And we got to also mention that Kateryna is married to Aleksandra Goryachkina. And I say this because, of course, he can open up his database and donate some of his opening novelties or some of his opening ideas. But also it's quite nice to have a sparring partner, to test yourself against the best of the best. I remember in 2024, she was working with Yesipenko. And now he's playing in the candidates. So it'll be interesting to see who she's working with now. But I was very impressed with how she played in the Grand Swiss. Also, she's a 3-time women's Blitz World champion, which again means that she's very dangerous. If she gets going the right kind of attack, then she's going to blow you off the board. And she has the experience as well to put the ball in the back of the net.
So rounding out, we've got Divya and then Vaishali. Yeah, Divya, obviously very accomplished, got her GM title directly, which is a little bit unusual, but has earned some GM norms since then. Won the World Cup, beat several of the contenders on the way there. She beat Humpy, she beat Tan, she beat Zhu as well. So it'll be a bit of a rematch for her and the candidates, but also her first time at the candidates. And she's the youngest one of the bunch, 20 years old.
Yeah. And I want to say also one of the most exciting ones as well, because from all of the players, I would say probably her and Vaishali have the most aggressive style. Like I remember in the Women's Speed Chess Championship when I saw Divya in action. And it was quite funny because we weren't sure when the match was going to start, because Divya had some previous commitments. And so she came late because there was traffic problems or something. She came late to the game. First game, sacrifice, boom. Absolutely demolished her. And I was like, whoa. Just can you imagine that? Just getting in from the traffic, just stressing about whether you're going to make it in time. She did. And then just getting there and playing spectacular chess. And as you say, in the Women's World Cup, she hadn't had the best of year. And then she had the Women's World Cup. And boy, as you mentioned, she beat Megaladze, Teodora Injak, the current European Women's Champion, Zhu Jiner, Harika, and then Zhongyi. And then she beat Humpy there in the end, and she got her Grandmaster title in one go. I mean, that was like a dream event or a dream run, right? You get Grandmaster title, boom, you're in the candidates, and suddenly you're making your mark on the stage. The reason I find Divya so exciting is because she has a confidence that is rarely seen amongst, I would got to say, women players. Because again, this is just my personal observation. Please don't jump down my throat. But the one thing I have noticed when it comes to confidence, that I sense that the women are less confident than the men, even though their ideas are more valid or just as valid. It doesn't matter. They're a little bit hesitant about speaking out. But Divya has that. When you ask Divya, what was it like to play Gukesh in the Grand Swiss? She was like, it was just another game. I've known Gukesh for a long, long time. And she went for Gukesh. It was a complicated game, and she was throwing out the aggressive moves, very active, and she put the pressure on the world champion. And that's something, that is very exciting to watch. And I really enjoy seeing her play. Same goes in her recent event in Prague. the games that she won, she literally wins in like very aggressive style. She's coming at the opponent's king. She's hunting it down. She wins in 26 moves. And it's so different from my style of play that I can just appreciate it for what it is. I mean, you know that she's going to play something confrontational at the beginning. Interesting enough, in the Prague Challenges, she did play Zhu Jiner, and that was the one game that she lost. I don't know how much of a team she has behind her, but I do know that she's working with Csaba Balogh. And when I first saw her play, Divya was kind of playing quite classically, and then, you know, I see her with playing Benkos, playing Evo Divo. You know, Divya is capable of absolutely everything. So I'm very excited to see how she does. And again, she's coming off a very good event in the Prague Challenges where she did very well. So the question is, can she maintain her form? You know, how will she cope in this situation? Will she rise to the challenge? The World Cup seems to indicate that she has strong nerves and she has the style to be the next superstar, I think.
And finally, we have Vaishali. If we said that Aleksandra Goryachkina was the youth among the veterans, Vaishali is the veteran among the youth. So this is her second candidates. And actually, it's both her and her brother's second candidates. I think that must be a record.
Yeah, Vaishali, I remember following her in 2023. You know, we were cheering her on to become the next Grandmaster. She did it. And I don't know. There is a real sisterhood sometimes in play in the chess world. You know, when one of us becomes like a fully fledged GM, we're like, yay, sister, you did it. And we like it. And I remember like saying congratulations to her in Qatar. And I was really so happy that she became the next Grandmaster and that she won the Grand Swiss in 2023. That was, again, felt like she was playing another level chess. And 2024 was a little bit mixed for her in the candidates. Yes, she finished in shared second, which on paper looks fantastic. But when you actually look at her path, you see that a lot of players, they had a lot of draws and maybe the occasional win here and there. But for Vaishali, it was like a roller coaster. I remember, you know, she lost 4 straight games and it was like, oh, is Vaishali going to be struck? But then her second half was all about the comeback, and she came armed to the teeth with sacrifices here, there, you know, and very committal style of play. When it backfired, it would backfire spectacularly because, you know, one of her pieces wasn't working and she was just pushing so hard. So the question is, you know, will she have learned the lessons from 2024? She's kind of fallen down in the ratings. I think she's the only one under 2,500. Again, that doesn't really tell us anything because anyone can go through a bad patch, but then pull it out of the ballpark, you know, and one tournament. That doesn't mean too much. She is from the Westbridge Academy, so that means that calculation is their strength. It's all about playing that aggressive style of chess. In terms of opening preparation, also fantastic. You probably won't be able to fault her there. And what I like about the Westbridge Academy is that they have a very special mindset. It's kind of very Zen-like, I gotta say. It's all about, you know, going with the flow. You know, the wins are not going to give you that much high. The losses are not going to be that low, and you just do what you need to do. And I'm very excited to see how she's going to do because when she needed to, she won the Grand Swiss. And that is a very tough event. And she not only did it once, but she did it twice. And we're talking about, again, the best players in the world playing this very long time control, very grueling event. She knew that this was her only way to get into the candidates, and she was able just to pull out all the stops and do that. So, very tough competitor. And let's not forget, she has her brother to call on for advice. Ramesh is her coach. So, I suspect that she will learn the lessons from her previous candidates, and I think we're going to be seeing she's maybe a little bit more relaxed and perhaps not go so hard out of the opening as she did and just play so aggressively and so committally. And I think that she will do very well. So basically, everyone is going to do well, Jonathan, if you listen to me. I'm not really giving anyone any insight into who's going to win because, like I said, almost anyone can win this one.
Yeah, I think Jovanka and I are both very excited for the candidates. We'll be following it. Jovanka, maybe you'll be commentating, maybe you'll be keeping us up to date in some other way, but it'll be great to see what happens.